Imagine you've made a decision about your own appearance, something deeply personal, and almost everyone around you says no. The company says no. The people closest to you say no. Everyone says no. But you do it anyway. And then, in front of thousands of people watching live, one person steps up and says, "I know exactly how that feels. I've been there myself." That moment happened on Weverse Live, and within hours it had spread to every corner of the internet. What exactly did Suga say that night? Why did those few words hit ARMY so hard they couldn't stop replaying the clip? And there's one small detail from that live session that almost no one has talked about, but it's the detail that changes everything. Stay with me, because we're gonna break this down layer by layer. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're the kind of ARMY who loves going deeper than the surface, no drama, no exaggeration, just real analysis of real moments, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. To really understand why this moment hit the way it did, you need to know the context first. This happened after BTS's concert in Tampa, Florida, one of their stops on their major US tour. After the show, a few members jumped on Weverse Live, which is something ARMY knows well by now. It's usually casual. They talk about what happened backstage, answer questions, share little stories from the night. It feels intimate, unscripted. But that night was different, because Jimin, sitting there with that long blonde hair that had become one of the most talked about looks in K-pop, said something out loud that most people never expected to hear. And what Suga said in response right after is the reason we're all still talking about it. So here's what actually went down. The concert had just wrapped, the energy was still high, the adrenaline still running. But instead of heading straight to rest, a few members got on Weverse Live to connect with fans. The vibes started light, some laughing, some behind-the-scenes stories, the kind of easy conversation that makes these live sessions feel like you're just hanging out with them. Then, Jimin started talking, and his tone shifted. Not sad, not dramatic, just honest, reflective. He opened up about something that had been going on behind the scenes, that his decision to keep the long blonde hair was never an easy one, that almost everyone around him pushed back on it, that even the company had reservations, that the resistance came from multiple directions at once. Think about what that actually means. You're one of the most watched artists on the planet. Every single thing about your appearance gets analyzed, discussed, and debated by millions of people, and you're being told, by the people whose opinions carry real professional weight, to change something about yourself. Jimin held his ground, and it wasn't stubbornness, it was something much more intentional than that. The long blonde hair wasn't just an aesthetic choice, it was a statement, a quiet, visible, daily statement that he had the right to his own image, his own identity, even inside an industry that doesn't always treat its artists like full human beings with full autonomy. That took guts. And then Suga spoke. With that calm, measured delivery that anyone who follows him already knows well, Suga added something short, something understated. He said that long hair is genuinely a controversial style, that people react strongly to it one way or another, and that he knows this not because he read about it or assumed it, but because he lived it. He tried it himself. He understood. 8 words. That was it. But inside those 8 words, there was so much. There was acknowledgement, there was validation, there was genuine solidarity, not the performed kind that gets rolled out for cameras and clapping, but the kind that comes from actually having stood in the same place. ARMY watching live felt it immediately. The comments section exploded, not with fans screaming, but with something quieter. People saying this was the most honest thing they'd seen on Weverse in a long time. Threads started going up on X analyzing every second of it. Clips got shared over and over, and not because something dramatic happened, but because something real happened. Now, here's what almost no one is talking about, and this is the part that actually makes the moment so much deeper than it looks on the surface. Watch the timing. Suga didn't respond the second Jimin finished talking. There was a pause, just a few seconds, but with Suga, that pause means something. He's not the kind of person who fills silence for the sake of filling it. When he speaks, he's already considered what he's going to say. That pause wasn't awkward, it was deliberate. And pay attention to how he framed it. He didn't pile on with compliments. He didn't give some motivational speech about following your dreams or whatever. He spoke as one artist to another artist, as one person who has navigated the exact same intersection between outside pressure and personal integrity, to another person standing at that same crossroads right now. And then there's this. He said, I, not we, not everyone goes through this. He said, I. That's not a rhetorical move. That's a testimony. He made himself specific. He made himself accountable to the story. In a world where public figures, especially in K-pop, are trained to speak in carefully managed, broadly safe language, a statement that specific and that personal is genuinely rare.
But wait, there's actually something bigger here that almost nobody's brought up. We all know that Suga is one of the most private members when it comes to sharing personal experience in front of a camera. He's famously introverted. He chooses his words carefully. He speaks through his music far more than he speaks through conversation. You don't get unguarded moments from Suga often. So when he chose this moment, right after Jimin had just made himself vulnerable in front of a live audience to offer up his own personal experience, that wasn't accidental. That was a choice, a conscious one. And here's what makes it even more interesting. This isn't the first time Suga has quietly shown up for Jimin in moments that matter. If you've been following BTS long enough, there's a pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Suga and Jimin are one of the most fascinating dynamics in BTS, partly because they seem so different on the surface. Suga is quiet, analytical, someone who processes things internally and expresses himself through writing and production. Jimin is warm, emotionally expressive, someone who communicates through movement and presence. They don't obviously seem like they'd be the ones to deeply get each other, but that difference is actually the foundation of why they do. Suga understands Jimin in a way that's distinct from how the other members do, because Suga knows what it feels like to be misread, to be held to a double standard, to have to prove yourself over and over again in an industry that's already made up its mind about what you are. Think back to the early days. Suga fought hard to be taken seriously as a rapper at a time when the industry had a lot of skepticism toward idol rappers. He put in the work, he built the credibility, but it wasn't handed to him. Jimin had his own version of that fight, proving that he wasn't just the pretty face of the group, but a real artist with real depth. Two different battles, one shared thread. Fighting to be seen as yourself, not as the version of yourself that's most convenient for everyone else. That's where Suga's empathy comes from. Not from sympathy, not from watching from a distance, but from years of first-hand experience that, while not identical to Jimin's, rhymes with it in ways that matter. And then there's the hair itself. In K-pop, an artist's look is almost never entirely their own decision. There are managers, art directors, stylists, concept teams, a whole infrastructure of people whose job it is to shape how an artist presents to the world. Jimin knowing that, navigating that, and still coming out the other side with the look he wanted, that tells you something real about him. It tells you that Park Jimin, outside the stage persona and the choreography and the carefully constructed image, is someone who knows what he wants. Someone willing to be unpopular in a decision if it means staying true to himself. In an industry built around the idea of the perfectly managed, perfectly compliant artist, that's actually pretty rare. Suga saw that, and he respected it enough to say so out loud in front of everyone. And now we get to the part that matters most. In the middle of all that pressure, the company pushback, the industry standards, the weight of being one of the most scrutinized artists on earth, there was one night in Tampa where two people sat next to each other, and one of them said to the other, "I know what this feels like. I've lived it, and I understand." For us watching, it might have looked like a small moment, a casual aside about hairstyles. But for anyone who has ever fought to hold on to who they are when everyone around them is telling them to change, that moment felt like it was written directly for them. This is what BTS does better than almost anyone. They don't just make music that connects. They show up as actual humans with real vulnerability, real friction, real bonds that were forged through years of being in the trenches together. And every time they let that show, millions of people around the world feel a little less alone. Suga didn't need to give a speech. He didn't need to make it a big thing. He just needed to say, "I've tried it. I get it." And that was enough. More than enough. Because that's what real solidarity looks like. Not the kind that performs for an audience. The kind that just shows up because it's there. So here's what I want to leave you with, and what I want to hear from you. Do you think moments like this are part of what makes BTS genuinely different from other groups? Or do you think sometimes we read too much into these things? I'm genuinely curious what you think, because there's no wrong answer here. And honestly, some of the most interesting conversations on this channel happen in the comments. Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. If this video meant something to you, share it with a fellow ARMY who needs to see it. Like it if you want the algorithm to show more content like this. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Purple U.